Good morning to all our viewers here in Asia and in Europe rather. In Asia, it's good afternoon. In other parts of the world, it's good evening. And we have for today our special guest, no less than my good college friend, Anabelle Ragsag. We also call her Bing. And we have witnessed each other start our careers way back then in late 90s, right? As researchers. That was our first career after college. And then, before we proceed, for our viewers, could you please take a moment and press the subscribe button and comment and to show your support for this channel. So Annabelle or Bing, as I call her, can you also introduce yourself to our viewers?
So I'm Anabelle Ragsag. I identify myself first and foremost as a mother, because in whatever I do, I have promised my kid that she is number one apart from myself. I'm also number one to myself. Um, I am an educator, a community organizer, and also a researcher and student for life of social policy. Um, I'm currently residing in Hamilton, in the city of Hamilton, which is, as I have mentioned to Seth a while ago, 65 kilometers from, I think, one of the most known city in Canada, Toronto. So my place is called Hamilton. It's also halfway from Toronto and halfway from Niagara Falls. So I am located in the place where you can visit either places with such ease. I'm also connected currently with McMaster University, which is again located in Hamilton. I sort of think that I divide my time between Hamilton, Manila, and Bandar Seri Begawan. Um, in fact, where I am now, I'm transiting in a place, um, but my final destination is in Bandar Seri Begawan, Brunei, because my husband is working with the University of Brunei. Yeah, I think that's the short introduction for myself. But I count myself as originally from Mindanao, which is the southern part of the Philippines.
Yeah, thank you for that brief but comprehensive introduction. So to start off, what problem did you experience before starting your career? And why was it such a big deal that you went looking for a solution when you did?
Problems when I started my career. When I look back, I think I have many um, versions and reincarnations and de-incarnations of my career. But a good friend who's currently a professor at a university in Australia has sort of given me a label for all the things that I've been doing because I didn't realize that I was doing a thing on the same thread. Um, so he was saying that I'm actually doing work related to understanding social justice, um, and understanding how to respond to poverty. And I think with that realization, sometimes it takes another friend or another person to tell you or to describe to you, this is actually what you're doing. There is a thread to it. But I think I started coming to this line of work, doing research on social policy, doing work on responding to the needs of people from my lived experience myself. Like I grew up with limited means from Mindanao. Um, I grew from a family of small farm holders in a place where huge multinational extractive um, harmful uh, agribusiness was taking place. So I was from Davao, a place in Davao specifically where Rami fiber, bananas were produced for exports. And so I've seen from that age, so it's sort of a history, not really like probably a discussion of the barriers, but more like a push and pull of where I came to where I am now by seeing that stark difference between people who are in want and corporations who are extracting resources in a place where local people are not benefiting much. And so, yeah, I think I those are the things that started me off in this line. So it's not really a barrier. It could be a barrier. Poverty is a barrier, but at the same time, it's also a recognition that it propelled me to go to where I am now. It made me realize more that I should be helping understand the issues that we're facing. And so when I moved to Canada, I also didn't have an understanding that I was just thinking, you know, as other people are saying, Canada is a place of opportunities, so on and so forth. I never had an experience. So even if I was in Mindanao, even if we were economic and financially excluded, I never thought of myself as ethnically excluded, because when we moved to Mindanao, we were from the majority Christianized population in the Philippines, whereas a lot of people in Mindanao are indigenous or Moros. So I didn't particularly experience being marginalized ethnically or racially. But in Canada, I have come to realize that despite almost 1 million of Filipinos, there is very less representation of Filipinos in different spaces in Canada. Like it's very rare to even meet a fellow Filipino in a lot of spaces. Most of us are invisibilized. And so I felt that that is a continuation of that work on social justice. Yeah, it's a very long answer, a long-winded answer to a question. I don't know if I answered.
So, why did you choose that career?
So, I think I started off with like in the Philippines, right? We started at the University of the Philippines, and we sort of being taught that we are a scholar ng bayan, meaning scholars of the country. And as scholars of the country, and as a thinker of a country, we have a responsibility to give back. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I chose what I am doing. But another one as well is beyond that responsibility, beyond that sense of duty. There's also an idea that I just want to understand what's happening in the world in general. I just want to understand why some people have something, why some people don't have something. Um, and being surrounded with friends who think similarly as well made me realize that this is actually a line that needs pursuing, researching social policy, understanding how it happens, understanding like how social justice or injustices operate, and who are excluded and who are omitted when this happens.
Okay, so how did your career solve a problem you were experiencing, and how did you choose or implement your solution?
I wouldn't particularly say that I solved anything. It's like I think it's for other people to say if I solve something. And I also think that a lot of the things that we should be doing is not necessarily solving something or problem-solving activities, but understanding the root cause of something. Because a lot of neoliberal thinking is on, we do things because they are, we do things in an apolitical way, that we need to solve things rather than looking into what are the root causes of things. And so I think as a researcher, I'm coming from that perspective as well. Like, what is the root of things? As opposed to, hey, I'm a savior and I'm gonna solve something. That may look very abstract as an answer, but I think as researchers and knowledge producers, it's to provide the hidden stories. It's to provide the invisibilized stories. I'm not a politician, and so it's not like my role to really choose what particular areas of action needs to be done, but I do provide alternative ways and ways for us to frame things. Like, why was this policy chosen? What were the policies that were not chosen because of something? For example, like in the Philippines, I was involved in a study before about the rise of the Bantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, conditional cash transfers. And it has been hailed as a one-stop solution for poverty. It has been hailed as the best anti-poverty tool and technology. But as a researcher, the question that nagged at me was, if it's the number one anti-poverty solution, what are social forces? What are social movements calling for? Are they calling for that? Were they calling for that? So sometimes, or not only sometimes, a lot of times, policymakers are interested in flash answers, flash solutions, because it has a soundbite that resonates well, without looking at which possible pathways have been eliminated just for one thing that someone else is pushing for. So the conditional cash transfer actually started as a progressive program from Latin American countries, but then it was adopted by the World Bank. And then the World Bank thought, okay, we want to pursue this and we want to provide funding and loans for developing countries. Developing countries in need of capital infusion thought, okay, there's money. Even if labor movements are not asking for it, even if housing advocates are not asking for it, even if informal dwellers are not asking for it, let's give it, because that's where the money is. So sometimes problem-solving solutions geared towards answers where money is involved, without interrogating why it has become the number one solution, whether or not it displays other possible solutions provided on the table. So I don't think myself is providing solutions. I think my role and my what I want to continue in my role is to see, where does my research lie? Who is it for? Who is it supporting? Who is it championing? What kind of pathways in social policy or international development does it offer, where it questions dominant mainstream understanding of things?
It's a very interesting line of work, no? And it would also be interesting to know if there was any impact evaluation already done about the CCT program, or conditional cash transfer program, in the Philippines. No? So far I haven't heard any.
No, there are a lot of impact evaluation done on the conditional cash transfer, because it's popular all over the world. So in developing countries, it's mostly the World Bank and donor agencies who are supporting it. And so they also have the money to support impact evaluation. But a lot of the impact evaluation done on it is on supposed quantifiable consequences to people's lives. So I think, again, coming to that problem-solving notion, rather than looking at what are the root causes of things, why are people experiencing poverty in the Philippines? Is it because the lack of money, or is it because of an equitable distribution of resources? So I think we can integrate those two, but it's difficult, of course, to do that. But yeah, to your question directly, there are a lot of impact evaluation done on it. So mostly along the lines of the economists, like how many people have been reached, what happens to the educational outcomes of families and children who are experiencing that. There's less voice for those evaluating where it came from, where the ideas are coming from. In the so-called global majority countries, such as the Philippines, the discussions are around conditional cash transfers. But in the global north, discussion is about universal basic income. But it's interesting to know as well that even, for example, in the US and in Canada, discussions on universal basic income are discussions that are championed by global technologies rather than social movements. To me, that is telling. Like, where are the social movements, the anti-poverty activists in these discussions? So if you look at literature, most of those championing universal basic income are owners of technology capital. So yeah, it's a very huge discussion to think to talk about. But yeah, I think I will pause there to continue the next questions.
Yeah. Well, it would be interesting to hear a lecture from you on that in that regard. So, in another aspect, were there any support features or relationship that you love, and how did it feel to get help in your career or throughout your life?
I always think about not even my career, but when I started in grade school, probably. So I was in a school called Nanyo Central Elementary School, which is, at that time, it felt very far from the rest of the world. There was no consistent or reliable, predictable transportation from our place to another place. We didn't have a library then in that school. I think they have a library now, and I've been thinking of collecting books for their library. But anyway, going back to your question, I remember this teacher, her name is Teresita Doot. And even if we didn't have a library, this teacher brought books to our classroom, and I was just touched by her trust that I could, and many of us could, bring that book into our homes for extended periods of time. And I think thinking of that made me realize that being trusted with knowledge, right? Being trusted with something that is scarce. I think that I have to do something out of this. I have to, that I have to make it worth that, because someone trusted me with knowledge, with a book, with a few books. Important as I grew, as I went to high school and I went to university. I don't particularly thought of myself as very confident when I was in high school. I even thought I didn't enjoy it as much as others were thinking about their high school. I moved schools, and time, because of many things. Like I felt, I don't know how to articulate it, but something like I felt like a fish out of water. Because I went from my small town of Nanya, I went to the now a city, and it's an hour away from Davao City, capital. I was not at par with everyone. Like I felt like everyone in high school was so confident in themselves, like they know which university, television, what it was the in music at the time, what jeans, brand of jeans were popular, so on and so forth. And I didn't have any knowledge of those things. I felt I didn't know what they know. And then moving to university, while I count the University of the Philippines as a place where I grew up a lot of my confidence, I also felt that a lot of the initiation rites conducted by organizations are so barbaric. And so, for example, like you and I joined the Association of Political Science Majors, and I remember thing where for me to excavate the kind of experience, but I never felt good on those the recruitment styles in universities. I hope they are changing now. Because I felt the philosophy of breaking you to make you whole is such a very odd and oppressive way of relating. And that was what I experienced. And I remember I walked out from my first, I don't know if it's called an interview session. I walked out because everyone in the room were just shouting and screaming. Like I didn't understand that because that was precisely the kind of relationship that I stopped some of my relatives from doing with me and my family. And I couldn't believe that so-called intelligent students would would design their recruitment process around such kind of an oppressive relating. And so yeah, that's a side story, but moving forward, like I think I have been very lucky to have a lot of mentors along the way. When I did my undergrad, Ella Atienza and Doy Romero were very, very supportive of my studies and just in general, very supportive of me, whether I am studying or wearing lipstick for the first time. I remember Professor Ella Atienza noticed it, and it really touched me that, oh, someone notices what I'm doing. And then moving on to doing my master's, I was lucky to be working with Professor and Dean Reneo Freneo, who also introduced me to the work of studying labor and employment in the Philippines. Um, and then I don't know what happened after that. I think I worked with PSSC, and then we worked together. Right, we worked together in a research center. And then I don't know what happened after, but what I felt was, I hope I still remember your question, but I think what motivated me and what helped me in my trajectory are people who truly cared, who worked within anti-oppressive ways of relating, even if at that time anti-oppression, anti-oppressive practice is not yet a term. I'm not sure if it's already a term being used in the Philippines, but there are a lot of people who were providing alternative ways of relating, and really like going beyond flashy ideas of who to work with, who to support, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so
It's a
that's
very long
the
answer.
long,
It's a very, very long answer. Was that your
very
question?
long answer.
You
Yeah.
can edit it out.
Yeah, you managed to cover everything. So, what are your goals as a professional?
My goal as a professional is to probably help others as well realize the kind of contributions that they can do. Being here in Canada, I've seen a lot of second, third generation, fourth generation who who have who have been wanting to reclaim their identity and who has been sort of in the dark of who they are and you know what kind of an ancestry they have. And so I think part of my I don't think it's even related so much about my career, but about encouraging people the way I was encouraged to pursue things that matter to them and knowing who they are and knowing that they have a voice. And I think that that would be like a tremendous accomplishment if I am able to support and help others to pursue and find out, discover what they can do with their lives, knowing their histories, knowing the pathways that their ancestors have gone through.
Are you comfortable sharing data or metrics demonstrating your success? And what does success mean to you?
What does success mean to me? I haven't thought a lot about that question in the last couple of years because I actually want to question the idea of success. Because a lot of us measure what we want to do, what we want to pursue by way of accomplishing some things. I think that's a mainstream understanding of what success means. Having like a lot of titles to your name seems to be like what success means to a lot of people. Reaching other shores seem to be like a success measure for other people. But I'm still in that process of questioning and interrogating, is that really what success looks like? Okay, I have left my very small town to a bigger town, to a bigger town, to a more bigger town. Is that success? I don't know. I think success means, for me, success means that I have helped someone reach their goals. I'm not a career coach or anything. Now I'm feeling like it's as if I am a career coach. I'm not, but I feel that in everything that I do, that is sort of like grafted in my process. That is sort of, what is the term for that? Like I include that in my process of things, mainly because I was helped by a lot of people, and also mainly because I felt there were also a lot of spaces where I didn't find help, where I was marginalized by virtue of being poor or and when my incomes were better, being of a different racial heritage and so on and so forth. And so I feel that success for me is using my work to really tell stories about and support those who are not in the mainstream. Not so much to be included in the so-called table, but to change the table, to upend the table and create new ways of relating, new ways of community caring. And that would also talk about, it would also relate to our our concerns in the Philippines against, against exploitation of our resources, against inequity, and other forms of injustices. So I don't have like a metric. I have a CV that can be very long, but yeah, but and sometimes it's also, when I moved to Canada, one of the things that I realized is we are actually in the Philippines, we don't necessarily introduce ourselves out there and say, this is my CV, it's very long. But not only the CV, but no, we don't necessarily, we frown on people who it's very long. It's a very long pause, but we sometimes, like in the Philippines, like we are not very straightforward in saying what our strengths are. But in Canada, what I have realized is you have to go out into the world and carry your own wagon, and not in an arrogant way, but truly realizing what you have and what you can do. And that is a learning for me. Like, I thought anything that would be sharing about your accomplishments would mean arrogance. But I realized that you can actually embrace what you have accomplished, but not being arrogant at the same time. Yeah, I don't know if I can answer your question. Sorry, I should be on point, but I trust that you can edit all of those.
So that's your metric. That's how you define success, and that's yours. So what does a typical day look like for you as a professional? How did it feel, and what surprised you about it?
Okay, as a professional, well, because I can't detach being a mother to what I am doing. So a day starts with preparing breakfast, waking up my daughter, and fighting over, it's already a few minutes, we have to go. So that is the start of my day, preparing breakfast, driving her to school. And then I try to do some exercises in the morning. And then after that, I go to my desk and just be in that tunnel vision, working and writing. So checking emails at the end of the day, and organizing with so many people on what to do. I have to share, I think it's already 1:21, one minute. Shall we move to the next?
It's okay. You can continue. Yeah.
Okay. So part of the things that I'm doing are a lot of things outside of my work. So for example, while I'm a social policy researcher, a lot of the things that I'm doing are also community organizing work within the Filipino community. And so that also involves carving some time to talk with different stakeholders and different partners in the community to carry out our work. So for example, we have a Filipino conversation series that was funded by the McMaster Office of Community Engagement. And it is housed, this conversation circle, which I have named Sadya, because Sadya is intentional, and Sadya in Bisaya means happy. So we have been calling it as a happily intentional conversation circle. So intentional in the sense that it's coming from feminist, queer, and decolonial lenses of providing